What is up, everyone? Welcome to another issue of
Sibling Rival-Read.
the comic book.
Yeah, I didn't know if I was supposed to.
That's
or
fine.
not.
No. That was great. We should do that all the time.
Woo!
Sibling, sibling rivalry. The comic book show where my sister and I pick a comic book each week, read it, and talk about whether it's good or not for beginning comic book readers.
And then suffer the consequences if not.
Yep.
You still haven't done the ice bucket
I
thing.
have done the ice bucket challenge.
Okay, you still haven't done it for a second time to which we've recorded it.
Yes, that is correct. We will get that done this week.
Should have done it yesterday when we were doing yard work.
Yeah, I mean, really, just yesterday or today, because it was actually beautiful and not cold outside. But hopefully, it'll be okay, and we'll get to do it tomorrow. Not tomorrow.
This week.
This week. Sometime.
I'll be on it.
Yeah. And hopefully, we're gonna stream it. We're gonna stream it.
Yeah.
Because that'll be better. Because we'll stream it.
And so you don't have to do it for a third time.
Because
things.
I think you should have to take a second shot of hot sauce.
Fine, but then I'm having my friggin' shot of mouthwash right next to it. It's really what helped me get rid of the burps that hurt.
I gotcha. Well, that's fine. So this week, what did we read?
It was terrible. Green Arrow, Quiver. Ooh.
Which, by the way, if you Google Green Arrow Quiver, trying to look for the cover of this book,
get a lot of
purchasing. Of arrow quivers that are green.
Shocker.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But if you put Kevin Smith ahead of it, A-okay.
Or if you put comic after it.
Maybe.
I can guarantee because I searched it earlier today.
I said maybe. We cannot confirm or deny Anna's claims.
You cannot.
So I guess we might as well just get into it. First off, something that I learned this week is that when we are picking our comics, it would be incredibly smart of me to look at the year that the comic that we're reading was published.
Not struggle bust.
It was really confusing because I was thinking a modern comic, and it is still a modern comic.
It is, although when you look at the year and you're like, oh my god, that's so recent.
Like
and
2001, that's not that far.
That's actually 20 years ago.
Yeah, you know, the first issue of this came out before 9/11.
Actually, I have on my list to read, not for this, but the 9/11 DC and Marvel standalones.
The Marvel standalone one is the second Spider-Man comic I ever read. Because that in volume 2, it started at the beginning of it. Anyways, but yeah, so like it was talking about like being gone for 10 years and how, you know, we got to go easy on Ollie because he doesn't know what a DVD player is or cable.
Being gone for 10 years, he forgot the past 15 years is what it was.
But he was gone.
And he was gone for 10.
He was gone for 10 years. Yeah.
You're right.
Even still, so I'm sitting here. You gotta sit and frame more. You know, like you gotta be better. But it's like I was reading it, and I'm like, what? 10 years? It's not like what are we talking about here? And then I finally I was finally getting like so fed up with Ollie doesn't know what a cell phone is, or you know, only Bruce Wayne would have some kind of high-tech fancy schmancy walkie-talkie like that. And I'm like, what? So it's like, that is the moment where I finally was like, I need to look at when this book was published. And then it's like, you bring it up in the info on Comixology, and what it told me was when the collected book came out, which was 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, 1998. We had cell phones and the internet and DVD players. Like that wasn't that long ago. And then I looked at the first issue and it was like
2001.
2001. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second.
Yeah, and then you just feel really old
Yeah,
that technology really occurred so quickly.
yeah.
But
It,
otherwise,
I was 11 when this comic book came out.
I was 5.
Okay, shut up. Anyways, so it was just like one of those things where it took me out of it for just a minute. And it's not like this is the first time I've read a comic book that like was written in the early 2000s. I've read comic books that were written in the 80s, like the 70s,
Yeah.
80s, 90s.
But I think this one was the first one that really, if it wasn't the first one that was old like that, then it was the first one that really calls attention to its age.
Right. And Anna and I were talking about this earlier today while we were kind of out running errands and things. But like other heroes with comic books being pretty much sci-fi,
Hmm.
a lot of heroes have tech that we use today
And
that they
even back
dreamed
then,
up,
yeah.
like back in the 80s and 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever. Um, and then like even more, like what I was reading before was like Spider-Man who built his own shit, or
Yeah. I
um,
mean,
or Batman who also being working with Wayne Industries, they were building like the edge technology. So
which can be the same said for Iron Man in the Marvel universe.
yeah,
And even the X-Men always had really high-tech things. And I mean, you kind of just accepted that because they were high-tech humans.
yeah, exactly. Especially when you bring like Forge into the
With his
anyways.
whole
Um, but yeah, so it's like I was thoroughly lost.
for the
For
first bit.
many reasons.
Throughout the
At the
entire
beginning,
thing you
no,
were
no.
lost? Oh, okay.
But the beginning, like third of the book, maybe like the beginning quarter of the book, like the first 60 or so pages.
Wow.
And not so much that I was lost and like so confused by like I couldn't follow the story,
Mhm.
but I was lost because of all of these things that they were talking about, that's happened in the DC universe just recently, and it's something that's calling a lot of attention to um like past events.
But a lot of the past events are like milestones for the DC universe. It wasn't like all small things,
No, I don't disagree with you there. But I think for the
which also later get cleared up in a really nice way.
it does get cleared up pretty
Just
nicely.
so far later.
It's like in what the last third of the book
Yeah, like
that
the
it gets
last.
cleared up.
No, I completely agree with that. I missed like those little summaries in the beginning. Like there was we read the collected edition, and
Mhm.
so there was like 2 or 3 pages on just the history of Green Arrow as a comic, not as like a story or anything like that in a summary, just the how people have taken Green Arrow and the artwork and his evolution. But so I was very kind of disappointed that that didn't have that, and I don't know if
Mhm.
that's a thing that was added later. Obviously, maybe
Maybe, but it also like this is the beginning of
this,
the new run of Green Arrow
which is why
comics.
also why I was like, oh, it's gonna be so great because it'll be a new introduction to an old hero.
Right.
Which it did end up. I did actually end up really, really liking it. But the beginning, having lacking all of that backstory until the very end, was kind of like, right, all right, I'm just as lost as Oliver right now. Great,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
great.
Yeah,
I feel you.
and I will say like they did that well in the comic where it's like not only is Oliver Queen lost, but so
So
is the
is the reader.
reader. um, and I think for what we talk about, um, I think this might be a difficult one. Like I'm kind of jumping a little ahead, but
Around.
but it's like I think it would be a difficult one for a new comic book reader, even a new Green Arrow reader, to just jump into and be like, okay, what Green Arrow comic should I read if I've never read a Green Arrow comic? Not this.
Really?
No.
I think that it was okay.
No, no, Anna, like this is so House of M does it too, where the House of M brings uh like calls out a lot of things that happened before House of M,
Yes.
but it's like they're briefly mentioned. The things that happened before this book
Are
are
huge.
important to the story of this book.
And I'll give you that, but I do think that the ending, bringing in um Barry, bringing in Hal, and bringing in those flashback points, even just bringing in the Batman like tape history of Green Arrow, lends itself to bringing information from comics that probably a lot of newcomer comic book readers don't really want to read because they're so old. And it gives a really nice and quick and dirty like summary of just how much these characters go through. I don't necessarily think that this is something that every newcomer is going to want to read, but I do think that as like at the very least a new Green Arrow reader is going to enjoy, because it's essentially rebooting his character. So it gives a starting point to the Green Arrow that you know now.
There are like the only other Green Arrow book that I've read has been the New 52 reboot of him. But like I feel like this is not a reboot that did a good job in letting the past be the past and taking the character forward. And I
Okay.
don't disagree that it's not a bad starting point for the Green Arrow. But if someone doesn't know comic books, doesn't know the Green Arrow, if someone came from Arrow on what channel, whatever channel it's
CW.
on, CW, and it's like, I want to read a Green Arrow comic, and they go to read this, this is going to be confusing.
Well, no, if they go from the Green Arrow comic, they're also expecting. I'm I agree with you in terms of the story point, like in the storyline. However, in like for the backstory. However, going from CW to this, the grit in this is just as high as the
Mhm.
grit in the show. So I mean,
But a lot of modern, at least New 52 Green Arrow started fairly gritty as well. So there is grit to be had with Green Arrow.
yeah, okay.
I think, and here's the thing: once you've read some Green Arrow comics, and like kind of, if you can get yourself through this comic, because this comic had another thing that this comic had another thing that we complained about in another book. Can you guess what it was? I'll give you a hint. It does something that the Vox Machina comic did.
It had a lot of text.
It had so much text. And, you know, I love Kevin Smith. He is a wonderful writer, he's a wonderful director. I think the story was fantastic.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the story, but I like older comic stories personally, which is what gravitated me towards picking this one,
But
which
even
I do realize is
so,
probably
it was a if someone's wanting to read a comic book, this wasn't a great example of how comic books consistently tell stories
okay. I
because
and
of how much text there is. And again, it didn't take me out of the story at all, but with me being as confused as I was, and then flipping a page and seeing more speech bubbles than art, so like just to break up my my brain a little bit, like there were pages and pages where it's like I'm reading 30 paragraphs of text in these in these little like
I can agree with that. I think that's something that I didn't read this over multiple times like you did for Ex Machina. So like you approach Ex Machina just
Vox
being
Machina, but yes.
Vox Machina just being excited to read the story, and I
Uh-huh.
was just excited to read it. So I think if I were to reread it, that would probably be more prevalent.
Well,
for a
and
parent
so
to
since that was something that we had talked about in another comic, it's now
it was
something that I pay attention to while I'm
yeah.
reading. And again, it's like it's not like the text was bad. It's not like the writing was bad. It's just everything was already confusing.
And then you just have a butt ton to read.
Yep.
And so then your head
Um,
already hurts from one thing, and now you're gonna
and
take
there were
this.
times where I actually like, and this does not happen often when I read comic books. There were times that I read things out of order, and it confused me more, just because of the way some of the
Oh,
panels
the
had been
panels.
laid out a
That's when I
couple of
do
times.
like I was like, I don't know which one to start at. That happened when we were introduced to
Hal?
Roy.
Oh,
No, not to
Roy.
Hal. To I think it was with Roy. Um,
The first time or towards the end? Okay.
don't
Regardless.
remember that much, but yeah, no, that one in particular, I remember being quite confusing. I will also say that as much as I did like the ending and how it progressed, I did feel like it took a while to
So
get to a good point. Like I don't think the story really got immersively interesting until Green Arrow is with Aquaman.
I
See, he just looks awesome.
I agree with you. Okay. Like it was a slow to start story. And I feel like, you know, not the end of the world to have a slightly slow to start
No, but
story,
in
but
addition to the other kind of
yeah.
megs that we added on, made it.
And I mean, I feel like it being slow to start is because it's the beginning of a new comic book run, you know, and like I'll give it some credit there. But yeah, like if you're new to comics and you're picking this up and you're reading it, you're probably thinking like, "Oh my God, when is something actually going to happen?"
Yeah.
Like this was like pretty Dragon Ball Z like,
In the
the,
beginning.
and then like I feel like there was
Oh my god.
such a slow build up,
And then
and
it
it
went,
went
whoo!
whachoo, and then boom, like
Yeah, like the ending was just as abrupt as the.
what just happened? Like you kind of left the book thinking to yourself, what is it over? Okay.
I thought the ending was also kind of
Oh my God.
interesting with him just being like, let's go grab a beer.
Let's go play catch, Dad. That's what I got from this. Which is fine. Like it's a trope. I get it. But really?
The heaven, I will also, man, I feel so bad because I did enjoy it. So everything I'm saying just sounds like I really didn't, but I did enjoy it. But I mean, the whole heaven kind of additive thing was also a little kitschy for my taste.
Yeah, there were a lot of things that were done
Like
in
Robin swinging in the middle of the sky. That bothered me. That actually bothered me. It was kind of like a Spider-Man video game where you look up
oh
to see where
yeah,
everything's attached and you just see like sky. uh,
yeah. Yeah. You know, there were things.
Poor things. And I
Um
like the comics that lead into this, so I think I'm also viewing it or a little bit through that rose tinted glass where I'm like
rose tinted
this
lenses.
the
Yeah, but close
lenses are glass,
sometimes.
butt nugget. But yeah.
Um yeah, you know, it was good. The story, like I said, it was a solid story.
Mhm.
Um, this it didn't.
It was one of
It's
those that's a solid story that probably could have been a solid novel based off of the amount of text and the amount of complexity. Like it probably would have been more gripping as a novel, just with the reader going into it not understanding what was happening, which is
Mhm.
also sad because like the art wasn't terrible. There were a lot of like really
No,
interesting and fun art moments, and
and
the
I
heavy
actually
shadowing was really gritty and added to
I
the language and
loved the
everything.
heavy shadowing. Like the sheer amount of blacks in each page. I'd love to see like an overall histogram
Of this
of this
comic.
comic and just see all of the blacks way over here, just bonk, a little bit of green and a little bit of yellow for the blonde hair, and boom, that's the book.
Yeah,
Um,
this was cool. I liked this panel.
yeah, and there were a lot of really cool art moments. It was a it was a dark comic.
It was a very dark
Like
comic.
there
I
there were
wasn't
things that I was
expecting it to be that dark, and a lot of the like language and banter, even if it wasn't
it
like
kind of made you like,
cursing with profanity, it was like a little cringy where I was like, please
right?
don't say that.
Right? Like, oh my
No.
goodness. Like just like
And I mean, I felt for you don't really know the girl all that much in this issue. I know she's going to become a main character for the rest of this run in terms of the Green Arrow run, but I mean, man, she got the short end of the stick for all of the dialogue that was targeted towards her. It was so atrocious. And I was like,
it was just bad. Like there were a lot of sexist comments, there were a lot of like pedophilia
a lot of
comments.
pedophilia comments.
Um
Even some of the political commenting, I was like, oh. And I mean,
so that I kind of like that kind of just played into the, I guess, really just the time that Ollie was living in.
yeah.
Um, but it was off-putting. Um,
I wasn't expecting it.
and
Which I mean, somebody who knows Green Arrow may very well be like, "Well, how dare you not
yeah,
expect that?"
exactly.
Like,
How dare you gatekeep? First off, okay. But like it was unexpected. It wasn't. It didn't. It didn't detract from the story, but it did hit, and it was like, oh, this is what's happening.
yeah,
Okay, so we're talking about raping a 15-year-old girl. This is
in a pretty
wonderful.
graphic way.
Yep.
Like, I know we were talking about a lot of text, but in that area, much rather prefer a
Back
lot of
camera.
text. Much rather prefer a lot of text than anything else.
Yeah. And I don't know how, like, and it's not like
It did. I was gonna say it did say for like 12 and up, but I don't actually think it said 12 and up. It said 12 and up for a different comic that I read this
it
morning.
did say 12 and up.
It did say 12.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. We're looking at it right now.
Huh.
Because yeah, I'm interested to read Crisis and Zero Hour and
I want to read Zero Hour so bad. I've only read one-offs, and I'm so mad about it. Although if you read Zero Hour, it would be a lot of fun to read Emerald Twilight from Green Lantern previous, because I mean, even this one, it's a lot of Green Arrow and Green Lantern, which I'm kind of kicking myself about because the Green Lantern comic that I was between for this week was between this one and that one, and the Green Lantern one preludes Zero Hour, which then obviously preludes this. So I was like, I made a mistake, but that's okay.
it is. And again, like at the end of the day, I'm not upset that I read it. I'm not, I don't feel deprived. I kind of want to read more, but it really doesn't have to do with the fact that the story gripped me that much. I mean, the story was gripping, but I just really like Kevin Smith, and I didn't realize that you chose something that was written by Kevin Smith. Um,
I liked the story. I really enjoyed the story.
yeah, it was a good story. It was just It was heavy.
It was. It was. And I mean, again, the heaviness of like the language, everything like that added to the art
Yeah, and it's like not
and the tonality. Which, and then you get this dude who you're like, oh my God, he kind of looks like the guy from Zatanna. And you're like,
it
yeah, but
is.
now it's Hal.
Yep. It's like it is the guy from Zatanna, but Hal Jordan.
Yeah.
And I mean, who knows? Maybe I I don't know.
Maybe what, Ben?
Maybe that
He
was
comes
Hal Jordan. Yeah,
he
you're
comes
right.
back as Green Lantern.
Yeah.
Why? Cameron's like unfocusing.
I
Focusing a
know.
lot.
It's kind of driving me crazy.
That's okay.
It's because we're not centered. It likes to focus here.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And we're having the focus point be the wall behind us. Which is fine.
See? Okay. The top panel in the corner is Robin, and he's just swinging, and there is nothing around.
Maybe he's hanging on to the Hawk Man. Benefit of the doubt.
Excuses.
I don't know. Look. But yeah, once the story picked up, it was interesting, but
Yeah,
it took a very long time to pick up.
I will 100%. I was the one who said that, so I
No.
will 100% agree with you
Well,
because
I
I'd
said
be
it first,
agreeing
but
with
that's
me.
fine.
You said that.
I said it was a very slow story.
You said it was a very slow story. I said that it picked up halfway through.
I said it picked up in the last third.
We will agree that, we'll agree with the point, disagree with who started it.
So let's see. You said it kind of picked up once.
He meets Aquaman.
Oh, right. Okay. Once he met Aquaman. Yeah, I guess that was about halfway.
No, it wasn't. That's Batman. Yeah, keep going.
Okay. The last like 15 pages of the book.
That's
Anna?
fine. So say it's 200 pages. Still was like 150, not 150, like page 60 that he meets
Aquaman?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I would even say that meeting Aquaman, I would say more like once he gets to the Watchtower. And like they really start talking. Like he met Aquaman early.
I will also say I haven't read old Aquaman comics, so him not having a hand, very weird to me.
Oh.
Very weird.
I only know that because I have read some things where I've seen him with the one hand.
The only Aquaman stuff that I had read was from New 52 and forward.
Yeah. I will say like they did address like see I love the art. I love him in this. All of the black.
I like it when they use the black shadow in a grittier comic to just accentuate the muscles because there's so much tension gripping in there, and you're just. And I mean, come on, that's a huge manta exploding. I also liked how he described manta, Darth Vader of the sea.
Yep.
Ocean Vader.
Ocean Vader. Yep. But yeah, like there were some. That's fine. There were some good, interesting bits, and it addresses a lot of kind of funny things that comic books do, like, oh yeah, heroes really never die.
This was also
I
one of my
love.
favorite things.
I think so. So when we're talking favorite panels, this was it, just because of that. It's like any immortal last words before I do you like I did your kid. Black.
There's just
and then
arrow.
Black. I love it.
I thought that was so funny. There were a couple of them where I was just like, oh, a beautiful humor moment in such a dark comic.
There was good humor in it, like, and
even
again,
with Batman, just with like there's Batman's subtle smile, like, eh.
Yeah. Yeah, and then like learning more and more. This comic would have killed me waiting month to month.
Oh yeah, I don't think. I think I wouldn't have stayed invested in it from month to month.
I think I would have stayed invested in it long enough to figure out what the hell Ollie is. because he's obviously not Ollie, like kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, if you had read from a month to month, if you're like dedicated month to month and you started this even just a little bit before probably,
Uh-huh.
then you may have been even more invested because you were like,
He was
no,
dead.
he's dead.
Yeah,
Like,
that's true.
you are wrong.
Um, but yeah, like it was a fun it was a cool re-origin story. Um, not only did they like tackle a lot of like ooh like some of those things that really, if I had known about, I would have said, hey, trigger warnings for
Yeah.
um in it.
I didn't know that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't read anything about it, but this
I
has
think
taught
just
me.
from now on, I'm going to be like, it's 12 and above. So, given our past with 12 and above, beware.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of like beware. I think Umbrella Academy was 17 and above. So
I mean, but Umbrella Academy, I don't,
I don't know either. But it also tackled some like it tackled heaven.
that's what I'm saying was like
Like
Heaven's take was a little like itchy, but it was a really interesting point. I think it dragged on a little bit
I agree.
because like it was cool and interesting, and then it just dragged on. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, and that's where like this story got really weird at times. It's because like it had build up and then it dragged forever and then violently shot up and build up and
Yeah.
then
And
yeah.
then leveled off and then plummeted
Yeah.
when it was over. Um,
Like you think this is kitschy, I still think let's go get a beer together, Dad. Is a lot more kitschy than
not know what
the pearly.
happened, especially since he was a teenager.
No, look, it's
It was funny, but I will give you like I totally agree, kitschy. I see it, and when I'm saying kitschy with Heaven, I'm saying it was interesting, and then it dragged on to the point where you were like, "Can it be over?" Like
yeah.
uncomfortable kind of a way, not uncomfortable in the way like it was bad, just uncomfortable in the way like I feel like this shouldn't be here anymore. I also don't really. I did enjoy seeing Barry. I don't understand why we saw Barry
There
in Heaven.
yeah.
I mean, obviously he
Obviously
deserves
he's
to be in heaven. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just like,
like you hold your tongue, Hannah. Barry Allen was a good man. Um,
I will also say though that he brings up the Speed Force and Wally, and so I'm just still salty about Young Justice.
yeah, and then eventually Barry Allen comes back to life and also masters the Speed Force. So it's
Yeah, yeah.
it was
And I mean,
what
depending on who
Ollie
that
was.
Robin is, Robin comes back.
I
Depending
mean,
on
that
who
has
it
to
was.
be Jason Todd.
There were a couple one-offs that are older, like with war crimes and stuff like that. With a female Robin, she never comes back.
Right, but that took place in a different universe.
War crimes?
Believe so.
Oh,
I believe so. I might be wrong, and if
I think that was
I'm sure someone will tell me.
I read that years ago.
But no, I imagine that's got to be Jason Todd because they mentioned that he's got a new Robin shortly after kind of thing, and but I think one of the things that was a really interesting story device was what Ollie is, in that you know Hal Jordan brought him back to life,
That was another thing.
but
Sorry. Continue.
but Ollie didn't want to come back. Like he
Yeah.
didn't want to leave heaven, which okay, that's cool. Um and like you're a husk, so yeah, that brings out some kind of interesting
Problems?
yeah, like arcane issues. Um and ask like the heavy question of what is a man without his soul? It's like, oh God. not a question I was hoping to think about today.
And that was one of the other things, was like that was later in the heaven kind of period, where you have the hollow Oliver Queen questioning what happens to him when he dies.
Yeah.
And he's just like, nothing. But I mean, you're me. So technically, you're already in heaven. I was like, okay, for someone in heaven, you are very inconsiderate.
Right?
Like,
It's like you're not only you're inconsiderate and you're incredibly selfish.
yeah, it took so long for him to get back in his body.
Like it was very like it, I don't know, like I understand the I don't want to talk too much about religion, but it's like there's got to be a point where it's like you're in heaven, you're supposed to kind of ascend in a way, like
Well, I mean, and I will. I know where you're going with this,
you're
but
supposed to
ascension
become
is a lot of
part of the living
distance.
force.
Yeah, I was like, but ascension is a lot of distancing yourself and just letting what comes come, and which that was the approach that Oliver Queen in Heaven was trying to do.
Except he could have just told Green Lantern no.
Yeah, yeah. He also could have just told Green Lantern, you like explain to him the whole what you're about to do is good enough to like be pardoned. I'm pretty sure bringing back Green Arrow just did the opposite. I don't think that was really brownie points.
Well, I
I think
mean,
that was like burned crumbs.
yeah, but Hal Jordan is now the like left hand of God.
Yes, I realize that.
So, which, Green Lantern is the left hand of God. Be careful. Um,
I'd be scared of him going all
oh,
parallax and everything like that, especially after all of that. And then you find out he's the left hand of God. I go, wow.
and then it's like you listen to the Heaven Oliver Queen. It's like I partially stayed on that plane to um essentially so he didn't have to face like
All
all of
his
this
bad
terrible
decisions.
things that he's done. And it's like, so what you're saying is your selfless choice was for selfish reasons. It's like you're you're not redeeming yourself in my eyes here, buddy.
No.
But I am interested to maybe know how the character grows, like from this.
Yeah.
Like I said, I do want to read the next Kevin Smith
Storyline for him.
storyline for him, just because it's Kevin Smith, and I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. Um, and I really want to see how that game of catch goes with his son.
Not what it was. I will also be like nitpicky. Stay on this page. Okay. I thought you were moving the page. This one with the whole newsprint. The newspaper is the majority of the page, and yet
Yeah,
I
you
cannot
cannot read
read
it.
the text.
Nope. Nope.
And I'm like, that's
Definitely
just
not.
lazy.
Even if you like freaking zoom it, like I tried zooming in on the tablet and everything.
Me too. I could only read like the first couple of
And I
bigger
could
letter fonts.
barely read the bigger letter fonts.
And that was such a huge contrast to, like House of M last month, where
You could
you
read,
read
the
an entire
article.
newspaper.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. What happened to Coast City?
Okay, so Coast City in what was it? It was before the Parallax storyline, before 0 Hour, but I think Crisis happened. Crisis happened before 0 Hour.
Yeah.
So during Crisis, Coast City was entirely leveled.
By what?
Remember the villain? And so, yeah, Coast City was just entirely leveled, and Hal wants to bring it is totally consumed with all of his grief because every single person that he grew up with, loving and knowing and being around, died completely and totally, like, vaporized type of a thing. So he goes completely insane with grief and tries to rebuild it just through his sheer force of will. Power. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, and so then that fall from grace storyline of Green Lantern is what leads to 0 Hour, which is the fight against him, which then leads
This. No.
to
His death.
Parallax's death.
Right.
And then Green Lantern's not actually dead,
Right.
but then he dies during Crisis, which happens. Fudge. Okay, something. So it wasn't
No.
Crisis that he died. No. He died in Crisis.
Did he die in Crisis?
Yes. He died
This
in.
is all very
I'm
confusing.
so sorry. He died in Crisis. There was something else beforehand then, storyline wise, and I can't remember, but it was a big group one. Oh my god, this is gonna drive me insane. This is gonna drive me insane. The only reason I'm saying that he dies in Crisis is because I could have sworn that Superman mentioned that during Crisis.
I thought Superman died during Crisis. Whatever. All the heroes die, but they eventually come back to life. So don't worry about it if your favorite hero ever dies. This is what I have learned from Green Arrow Quiver.
Unless you read Injustice, then your favorite character is just dead, and they replace him with a terrible story.
Oh my. Okay. We're not reading that.
No, we are not.
What were some of your favorite moments though in general?
So I really liked the thwack because I just thought that was
100%.
that was just hilarious to me.
100%.
I also though enjoyed Oliver, the new like Hollow Oliver, meeting up with Dinah on the plane. With the whole where she doesn't know if she can trust him again, the whole glass break in the background of that panel, I thought was. Oops, sorry. I'm sorry. Well, you asked me, so why would you ask me if you're looking for something specific to talk about?
Go ahead.
No, that's it. That was all I was gonna say. I think.
Here it is, just so people know. The glass shatter kind of image back here. I was going to mention as well. I really liked the reunion between them in general. I think it was just again like art giving emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It did really well, and this right here, I love silhouettes. Yeah. And like this was, it was pretty.
Yeah, it was a very.
It was a beautiful moment.
It sounded as quiet and private as it looked.
Yeah.
With the text and the tone of the artwork. It was a great, especially at this point when everything's kind of wreaking havoc in the story. And you're truly getting into the grit of it. Very interesting.
I knew he was going to be the bad guy from the very beginning.
Me too, and I don't know if I just misread it in the very beginning, but I was like, he's not a good guy.
Yeah,
like the moment you meet him, he's not a good guy. And so then when he was living with him, I must have missed something.
Yeah. And then that's where we get into like a satanic cult. Like we take a lot of dark turns. Like there's demons, there's hell, obviously if there's hell, there's heaven.
Yeah.
And then it's like it takes some turns. And like it was interesting.
Oh my god, and then the fluffy, like, fun demon that's actually adorable.
Yeah.
Named Spot.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah, and
who
then there were
ate him.
orgies, and yeah, look at
Look
him.
at how cute he is.
He's adorable. He looks like Chewbacca, but with like big and
Like,
with tusks.
like,
Like take the tusks away, he looks like a Wookiee.
yeah, but oh my God, I know Star Wars, and
The Wampa.
thank you.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah, he kind of looks like
a
a
red wampa.
brown red Wampa.
He's red.
Battleship and Monopoly and 100-piece puzzle. Yeah.
Oh, there was also this thing for art. Sorry, you can
Okay.
keep talking.
But it was that's the one. You want to browse pages? There you go.
My thingy tells me when I'm looking at it, so I was confused.
But I like again, like I don't know. It was an interesting villain, and I thought it was a fitting start villain for what Husk Oliver was dealing with. Since it's like all of these demons essentially want to use his body to wreak havoc on Earth, which the villain wants to do, but he also wants to use Oliver Queen's body to rape a 15-year-old girl. Maybe I need to mark this episode as explicit.
Okay.
By the way, like none of my episodes are marked as like good for children, but
Yeah, understandable.
Do you have something to say about this scene?
Okay, yes, and you're probably gonna be like, "Are you kidding me, Anna?" I probably like stared at this panel for a number of minutes. So at the very top,
Uh-huh.
in normal, but in modern day comics, it's usually like copy and pasted layering type of a thing when just a subtle change is made. And in this one, you can
Oh
tell
my
that
God.
they redrew the entire
Why
panel.
did you even point that out to me?
Does that bother you? It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I thought it was
Okay.
kind of cool.
Yeah, but the arrow's not in the same spot. That bothers me.
Okay, yes, that's understandable.
And,
I
like, the
thought what
fact
was
that-
kind of cool
Okay.
was the subtle differences between the hollow Oliver Queen compared to like
Did they not
the
call him a
heaven.
husk? Am I the only one that's calling him a husk?
Yeah, you are the only one who's calling him a
Call him a
husk.
husk.
No, they call him a hollow because I thought it kind of sounded holy and so holy, but like the beard detailing is different, the amount of hat that is showing and hair and the ear and all of that I thought was a super cool thing that I noticed. I do get though the whole arrow thing would be annoying.
Yeah.
And the shaping of the beard in terms of how much negative space there is and everything, I was like, wow, it's such an old comic that they didn't just copy and paste it.
Even the mountain in the background is different.
I know. Oops. Yeah, I know the shading.
Well, the shape of it.
Oh, that yeah.
Ding
yeah,
ding ding dong. Yeah. So that is a neat thing, for sure.
I just said about the arrow.
I am. I don't want to look at it anymore. Um, Definitely not something I would have ever noticed.
It was one of those things that I was like, something is off and I can't pinpoint what it is. And then when I realized it, I go, oh, that's kind of cool. It's that old of a comic. Which seems really weird because it's only 20 years old. So you're kind of like, what? Or, okay, 2001. Wow, it doesn't seem that old. And then you're
Yeah.
like 20-year-old comic. And then you're, oh, wow. I worded that incorrectly. Out of order.
Yeah. It's interesting. I also really like I I enjoyed the art in this quite a bit. I know I know it wasn't anything like extremely like whoa, look at all this. But I thought the darkness of it was incredibly fitting, and because of that, I did really enjoy it. I was confused by Wonder Woman randomly like making out with him, but I feel like this just they wanted to confuse me at a lot of turns. Um,
You're right, though. Superman did die in Crisis. Now that I'm thinking about it harder, I'm like, that's right.
Also, look at how glorious Superman's hair is.
I thought that
Like,
for so long. I was like,
oh
I
my
don't
god.
remember
I
his
think
hair ever
I
being a
stared
mane.
at this and legitimately stared at this panel for like for a while. Not only because I was trying to figure out what we were looking at in the little like cell images, which I now understand are cells. At first
Which
I was
was cool,
thinking,
like a cool throwback to that. I go, that makes more sense. I was
yep,
like, why on earth do I care if he felt something move?
yeah.
That was worded very poorly.
Um
Leave.
but like and then I just kept looking at that hair. I'm like, wow. If that's some luscious hair right there. Um
Oh,
but yeah, and a comic is weird when Batman provides quite a bit of comic relief.
it's great.
Because he had like a solid like three moments where it's like,
It was just funny.
yeah, it's like, wait, was that Batman being funny? Oh.
Fantastic.
Um, hmm. And then of course you also have the moment of, do you remember the first time you felt cold? You mean like when my parents died? It's like, oh, yikes, went there.
Yeah.
Um, but it was. I don't regret reading this in any way. Um, it was enjoyable.
I was gonna say it was an enjoyable read.
Yeah,
Not necessarily the best for somebody getting into it, maybe.
yeah.
But it is a good read for somebody who wants to get into the older comics. Maybe don't start with this one. Like start with the Green Lantern, Emerald Twilight, Emerald, and then go to 0 Hour, and then go to this because that's going to be a really fun read. That's like the full story arc.
I think another thing that I would prefer,
And that's fun.
like in a Green Arrow comic, is a little more like why he's doing what he's doing. Like, I guess like
You just gotta read the origin story to
no,
really
no,
know what
no,
he's doing.
but the thing is, other comics they bring that up in these solo stories. Like in the Spider-Man story that we read, it
Yeah.
was brought up. Like, yeah, it brings up, his Uncle Ben died, but the whole him deciding to be a teacher, he's like, I'm doing this because this is something, I have this knowledge, I have this power of knowledge. It's my responsibility to make sure that other people are equipped
Yeah,
as
here you
well.
kind of just got an
Like,
angsty Green
exactly.
Arrow. But I mean, in that defense, this one was supposed to more so be a look back on him. Like if you reassess the interactions between all of the other Justice League, they're like, God, I forgot how annoying you were, and how like self-righteous and all of this. So I mean, you did get that part. So
But
maybe
even
coming
that
from
wasn't, I forgot how self-righteous you used to be. Because
Mhm.
it's not even like the Green Arrow that they most recently knew
Yeah,
was as self-righteous.
yeah,
It's just, I forgot how self-righteous you used to be.
right. But that's what I'm saying is that maybe then if you wanted to continue reading it, maybe the next one being once he gets his soul back is more of a hinting at that because this one not necessarily that I agree with that take. I just think that that might be something that happens potentially.
Yeah. Um, like I would recommend this for the comic book intermediate. Wouldn't recommend it for the beginner. The noob. Like I rank people from like I've never picked up a comic before, so comic book noob.
Mm-hmm.
To I've read a few comics here and there where I'm interested in a character just to know a little bit more about them. Them I put into the beginner.
Okay.
Intermediates are the people who like they go through and they kind of do what we do, where it's like, oh, I want to read this or I want to read that. They read a handful of comics a year, where they're enjoying it.
Yeah.
Um, and then the advanced, where it's like you've followed a character for a certain amount of time, maybe not from beginning to end, but
I feel like that's so hard
and
to
then the
do.
expert.
Yeah.
Um, I would probably place myself somewhere between intermediate and advanced.
I'm okay being intermediate. I very much I find storylines that I'm really, really interested in, and I kind of build backward.
So this is good for the people that like to do that. Um, is this making me so interested in Green Arrow and Oliver Queen that it's like, ooh, I want to read more Green Arrow, Oliver Queen books? In a way, it is, because I'm thinking to myself, like, there has got to be better Green Arrow stories that are more cohesive, beginning to end. Like that's my thought process. I don't think it's bad. I just think that this can't be the best.
There is another one that I want to read where I'm like, probably should have just had us read this one because it's a great starting point, given it's the secret origin of Oliver Queen. And I mean, that one I do really want to read. But this one, 0 Hour, is like one of my top read lists ones. So everything pertaining to it gets me excited, which blinded me in my choice. So I apologize to anybody who read this and goes, I have no idea what just happened.
It's okay. I forgive you.
I don't care about you.
You just said you apologize to any of those people, and I'm one of them. So story-wise, I do give this book, and I give it a 6 out of 10. The story was good. My major complaint with it is it wasn't it wasn't beginner friendly.
It wasn't standalone friendly.
It wasn't standalone friendly.
Because like
yeah.
It did get me really excited about reading like a few of the comics that I haven't read that are in between.
Uh-huh.
So it did its job for me for story, but for story to build upon, not necessarily on its own. So I mean, I was gonna give it a 6 for the same reason, or for that reason. But I did really like the story.
And like what I'm kind of comparing it to is Zatanna. Like the story, they were different. Like Zatanna, we talked about it earlier today, how it was kind of like Zatanna was a collection of short stories.
Yeah.
Whereas this is like your novel kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I was never lost in Zatanna the same way that I was lost in this.
No, but this was kind of like a lost that I think kind of like an Inception type of a lost where you're like, I have no idea what's happening. And then you get to the very end and you're like, oh my God, I know everything. And then you reread it and you're like, yes, all the Easter eggs.
I'm not giving it that much credit.
Okay, I'm giving it that much credit. Because like just like we said with the whole Adams and then the Green Lantern silhouette and all of those things, I'm sure if you reread it, there would be so many Easter eggs to point you in the direction where like, of course this is going to happen. How did I miss that type of a thing? Maybe Inception was a bad movie.
I think Inception was a bad movie to compare it to. I see what you're saying. Whereas like an Ocean's 11 kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I was gonna go with
like it's
the magician movie that I really like.
Now You See Me.
Thank you. Yeah.
Which same kind of feel.
Yeah.
As a Ocean's 11, like where it's like you see everything happen, and then it goes back and it
explains it all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'll give you that. And again, 6 out of 10. It's still a passing grade.
Yeah, I know, but now I'm like, maybe I should give it a 7. But at the same time, I will say that it's more of it's not a good standalone.
Yeah. So. And I've done this a lot where it's like I go with how beginner friendly is it and judge
I know, and
pretty
then I just
harshly
feel
on that.
so bad because I'm not very good about picking apparently beginner-friendly ones.
This
So I
is
apologize, especially with DC because I love DC, and then I picked two DC, and both of them I'm like, okay, it's probably not the best one for a beginner.
yeah. At least with Robin Wars, like Batman is a slightly more popular character, so the likelihood that someone's going to understand based on just tangential knowledge.
I think it's one of those other things that a beginner needs to go into a comic, in my opinion, okay with just accepting some facts, whether you're like, when did this happen? It's like, just accept that it happened and move on. To me, like if you're going into a comic like Robin Wars, you when you were like, what happened to Batman? I'm like, just that he lost his memory and move forward. It is such like a tertiary storyline that it doesn't affect anything other than the fact that he's
Other
not
than the
Batman.
fact that all
He's
of the
not
Robins are
Batman.
taking over Gotham, and Batman would have never let that happen.
Oh,
It's not just a tertiary,
it is because Nightwing was the main character, really. So he took up the mantle of Batman.
But Nightwing's taken up the mantle of Batman before by actually being Batman. So it was confused. Anyways, that's not what we're talking about today. Art. Give me your art.
Okay, I'm between a 6 and a 7, mostly because it really did go along with the storyline really, really well. It's a very old comic book art style in terms of how very graphic it is. So I mean, for that, I just accept that it's an older style. It's not necessarily my style, but it aided the story a lot more than it hindered it. But I think I'm gonna give it a 6 because I don't think it elevated the story. I just think it was a good partner to the story.
You're giving it a 6, you said?
And a half. No, I'll give it a 6.
Okay. The art, I think it complemented the story very well. Um, at points, I feel like it elevated the story a bit, but not consistently throughout. And I did enjoy it as being this is a old comic style, but done with more modern tools.
Mm-hmm.
And I did really enjoy um, the overall look that brought brought out, and the darkness of it really lended itself well to the fact that the book was dark. Some stuff happened in it. And there were some pretty beautiful scenes and things like that. I will actually give the art a 7. Because I there were moments that I did really enjoy. I'm giving the art a 7 solely based on Superman's glorious, luxurious locks.
No, he's not.
Um, but yeah,
I
that's
did also really like the appearance of Roy in the comic.
yeah. There's the son with the daddy issues and the son who gets to go play catch with his dad.
Who's the catch?
The same.
Overall, then mine would be a 6.
Yours would be a 6.
Ooh, that's bad. So I'm glad it's a 6.5 for the art. Oh my god, I'm really glad I put a 6.5. Although very fitting for this comic if it's 6.6. Because
That's
heaven
true.
and hell type of a thing. But I'm
Yeah.
gonna 6.5. I feel better. I feel like a better person.
Oh, Blood was kind of a cool character too. Never knew him in anything else.
He's been in Batman comics.
Has he?
Yes.
I mean, obviously Batman knew him.
Yeah, but he's
Etrigal? I
I want to say he's been in Batman comics that you have.
It's a possibility. I've read a lot of Batman comics.
You have, I know.
And there's so many different kinds of Batman comics too. It's kind of all lost up there. Brains are like a hard drive, guys. Like there's only so much space in there.
Oh, okay. I was like,
And sometimes you got to replace it with other stuff.
your overall.
My overall mm, my overall my overall's probably a 6 as well.
I feel like so mean because I'm nitpicking this, and I did enjoy it.
Yeah, but again, what we're doing is we're trying to rate this for not for ourselves necessarily. Like
Yeah,
there's
just as a
there's a little bit of that goes into it, but that's why we kind of talk about our scores a little bit more.
yeah.
Because yeah, I enjoyed the book. I think again, Kevin Smith wrote a good story, an interesting story. It wasn't super coherent for me, but I think it was not super coherent for me because I don't know everything that led up to this. And not that I need to know everything that led up to it, but knowing some of what led up to it would make a huge difference.
Yeah, I can see that. I'll
Um,
be better about picking my DCs.
no, I
I'll be
mean,
like, I'll no, but I feel like I need a redemption just because I've been picking such bad ones for
so
beginners, and I really love DC, so I need
this
to do
was
better.
this was better than Robin Wars was for that, I
Okay,
think, because at least this is like
that's
Robin
far.
Wars was not like there were quite a few non-established characters in it. Like the like well-established characters, like the new Robins, like
Yeah, the We Are Robin
We Are
kids.
Robin kids. Um, and for anyone who didn't know that there have been multiple Robins, might have been a little bit of a shock for them as well. But I can't imagine that that many people don't know that there are different Robins.
Yeah, I've heard
Um,
this.
yeah, if you do, then
We apologize for generalizing.
yeah. Um, but read up on some of those Robins because each different one is cool. Um,
That's the best. Said
I
very
will
biased.
I will say like again, it was enjoyable. I'm not upset that I read this one. Um, it makes me it makes me want to read more DC to know more about DC than it makes me want to read more Green Arrow
I
or
can
Red
understand.
Lantern.
Yeah. Which I mean still gets me excited because I love DC.
Mm-hmm.
These scores are sad. So I need to do better with that than you do
Yeah.
with your manga. Oh man.
um, Speaking of Fathom,
That's the next comic. Volume 1.
Volume 1. We did a lot of Volume 1s this. Like everything that we're reading this month is a Volume 1. Yeah, because we did Volume 1 of the Dr. Aphra comic.
Volume 1 of this.
Volume 1 of
And
this.
you have to do a volume 1 of manga because we're not reading an entire manga series.
So I do have some mangas on my list that aren't Volume 1. Like I have an Astro Boy, like that takes place in the middle of the Astro Boy story.
But I mean,
But it's a
the
story arc that
I was like the Astro Boy manga, the Pokemon manga, probably the Dragon. Does Dragon Ball have one? I know Yu-Gi-Oh has one. All of those are probably so long running,
that
just
you
like
could
any
find
other
a run.
comic. Just like you can just jump in there.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so we're reading Fathom uh next week. I was about to
Yes,
say next month. Next week. Um, which
is my pick.
yeah. So hopefully it does better. Otherwise, the wheel of torture's hitting you.
I just really don't want the ice
Wheel
bucket
of
challenge.
misfortune.
That's like
Oh, well, look at you better.
you handle cold better. So I mean, I've told you this. If that was me, I probably would have burst into tears.
I hope she gets the ice bucket challenge. I want to see her cry.
Try at everything.
I know. Hey. I'm just kidding.
Dang.
But yeah, so far the scores are looking a little more in my favor. I've got 17 points and Anna has 12.
You know, this might be one of those things where we just continuously go back and forth.
It could
Every
be.
like other month is the other person, which would be great.
Or it would be great if I won every month from here on
It
out.
would be terrible. I would feel like an idiot for the ones that I picked.
And I would feel like a god.
Oh my god.
Do we have anything else to mention? Where can people find you on the internet?
On Instagram, I have 2 different accounts. I have Anna_Riddick, which is mostly my dog. I have an art account, which is @Riddick_designs. So yeah, fun stuff.
Cool. You can find me everywhere. It's BenPie, or it's benpie.com, which is now a thing. But yeah, that's where you can find me. Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube. It's BenPie. That's all I got.
Shalom-Aste.
Shalom-Aste, everybody, and have a good one. Bye-bye. You're an idiot.
It's a great word.
Uh-huh.